Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Courtney Lavine, your co-host for today's session, alongside Amy Brandt, editor-in-chief of POINTE magazine. We have the pleasure of not only guiding our discussion, but I will also be sharing my insights as a dancer in the ballet adaptation of Like Water for Chocolate, where I portray the character Nacha. Alongside us are our fellow ABT dancers, Cassandra Trenary, who breathes life into the lead role of Tita, and Herman Cornejo, captivating us all as Pedro. We are also honored to be joined by the esteemed author, Laura Esquivel, and brilliant two-time award-winning choreographer, Wheeldon, who will be joining us in a bit. Today, we will explore the fascinating journey the story has taken from a beloved novel to an expressive ballet. Our dialogue will be a free-flowing discussion, and our panelists are encouraged to contribute to any questions if they feel inspired to do so. We are eager to hear different perspectives and insights, and with that, welcome to our pop-up book club session, and thank you to our panelists and our audience members for joining us. Now I will pass it along to Amy.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm going to start with Laura. Laura, we're all here because of your brilliant novel. What inspired the story when you were first writing it, and are any of the characters or elements of the characters in the books based on you and your life?
Well, I love cook. My mother is a great cook, but the idea, so of course the cooking is something, my way. I grew up in the kitchen, and I grew up in that space, listening women talking about themselves, about life, about everything. But the idea indeed of Like Water for Chocolate came because my mother and my family, we had a lot of photographs, and photographs since 1870. So we really keep all the photos of the family very well conserved. And I discovered Tita, the original Tita there. And I never met her. When I was born, she was already dead. So I asked my mother, and who is this beautiful woman, and why we don't have more photos of her? And she told me, no, she never got married because my grandmother never allowed her to do that. So for me, it was devastating. I said, how come? And so in the photographs, she, at the beginning, she's so beautiful, so young. And at the end of her life, she's bitter. The face is like this, the gesture, it was really sad. So I decided to write a story for her, one story that can liberate her and change in her story in paper. And that's why I did with Like Water for Chocolate. The only thing that is real is the name, Tita, but everything else is part of the fiction.
That's really fascinating to hear, because I was myself really curious about that tradition of the youngest child not being able to marry, and wasn't sure if that was a real
never. No, that tradition doesn't exist.
Okay.
That's it. But it's funny because that story, watching that image change, the desire of change her destiny, even that she's already dead, helped me to change my life. The way that it is a play where we are changing and exchanging stories. And I'm sure the people who had the privilege will have the privilege to see the ballet will have this same process, because when you watch Christopher and all the wonderful dancers on stage created that amazing images, you will keep them. And I'm sure the audience something will move and change in her life, in her emotional state, in their mind.
Well, that leads me to my next question, which, this has been adapted before into a film in 1992. And so now, what has it been like to witness the story being told through ballet, and what elements have really maybe surprised you the most about this adaptation of your novel?
Yeah, it is it's so amazing. I watch most of the process, even at a distance, because Christopher was so gentle that he shared with me all the process. And that idea, because my book has been translated in many languages, but in every translation you lose something, and it is completely normal. But watching how a deep, very profound emotion can be transformed and transmit in one movement is really something amazing. For me, it was fantastic. I admire Christopher very much, and I'm very grateful. And I learned a lot of that language, silent language, is very, very amazing.
That's the great thing about dance, is it's universal. It can be understood through everyone. I was curious if there are any aspects of the ballet adaptation that you think audiences might be really surprised by or engaged by, especially those who have read the book and are really familiar with it.
Yeah, well, I think there are moments in the novel that, for instance, in the adaptation, I did the adaptation for the screen. I wrote the screenplay. So when in the movie, everybody always remember the scene with Gertrudis in the horse, with the naked. That's a beautiful scene. But that scene on stage with the ballet, I think, is more powerful because boom, you can see all the sensuality, the passion, step by step. So there are things that we couldn't put it on the screen, but Christopher put it on stage, and it's that kind of breathing, just the breathing, to show when you are in love and you breathe at the same rhythm and you share some. That is really, really stunning.
Sorry, having trouble finding my mute button. Yeah, I'm very excited to see the whole production when it premieres. I have some questions for the dancers now. So my first would be, could you share with the audience some of the challenges you faced translating the emotions and the depth of the characters in the novel into dance movements? And I can choose someone, or someone can volunteer.
I can kick it off. Some of the challenges. I mean, honestly, Chris provided us with such a beautiful map, right, of the work to just kind of trust and follow and devote ourselves to. Personally, I think the challenges for me as Tita is it's just extremely intimate and vulnerable. And Herman was talking a little bit about this the other day. You know, in most of our ballets, you'll see classical ballet, we communicate through pantomime a lot. And this work is just so deeply human. And we don't really rely on the gestures that you normally see in our classics, which is both a gift and a challenge. There's a lot of moments where I'm facing completely downstage, looking at the audience, and I just have to feel everything that Tita's feeling in that moment. I don't get to hide. I don't get to face a corner. I don't get to face upstage. I'm not always facing my partner. And so there are just these like really vulnerable moments that in the beginning I felt a little shy about. Now we've had the privilege of having a few shows under our belt and a ton of preparation. So it's just been cool to kind of find a bit of breakthrough in that and just like completely surrender to it. And I think is also such a true journey for Tita as well. So.
Yeah, completely. I agree with Cass. You know, the fact that we don't have pantomime on stage, it makes you really be a human being on stage. And you know, this ballet kind of brings it brings, even though you're a character, it brings who you are on stage, because ultimately whatever you do is a personal choice from all the variants that you can do. So, you know, to be able to be in a character, but also to go deeper into yourself and try to choose what you would do in that moment, it's very special. And also to work with Cass that, you know, we like to go into very deep emotions and really try to make these layers in this character. I think for me, the biggest challenge in this ballet is to portray Pedro since he's a teenager and make this arc, you know, getting older. And so in such a short time, you have like more than 20 years of life. And as a dancer, I never done that before, where you have to, you know, put attention to those details that time has passed and how you react, how you walk, how you know, even the way you dance, it can be the same way as when you start the ballet. So for me, that's the biggest challenge in the piece, to make sure through the acts I can show this character being getting older and having this weight in his back about all, you know, all the pain that he's going through for not being able to be with Tita. But definitely it's a masterpiece as a novel, and I think Chris made a masterpiece into a ballet.
Yeah, absolutely, Herman. And something similar to Herman, my character Nacha is quite a bit older than I am. So I think one of the challenges that I faced was trying to make sure I was conveying that I'm an older motherly figure, which I hope I was able to do that. But what Laura was saying is we are able to communicate using our bodies, and thankfully what Cassie was saying about Chris being so amazing and having this great roadmap, and his team and our team were able to help us really show or help us guide us towards a correct emotion or a correct feeling that Chris wanted us to convey. And yeah, the book is stunning, and we were also all able to read the book because we were given copies, which was so incredibly helpful. So that really helped me hone in on the character Nacha, because I was able to read who she was and learn that she was Tita's mother figure. So thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have one final thought, and then Courtney, I'm going to pass it to you. But you kind of touched on that, like taking a character from the page and translating it into a fully flesh and blood character on stage. I'm assuming that Herman, Cassie, that you also read the book, or did you have a process or a way of trying to kind of figure out who your character was outside of rehearsal at all?
It's definitely helpful to have the text. I would just, we're so lucky it's a trilogy actually. So I also have Tita's diary, and that's told the whole novel through her eyes, and even the 20 years that we sort of skip over in the novel, like Water for Chocolate. So there's just so much beautiful poetry to pull from that lets you know exactly what I'm going through in each moment. And I have just everything underlined that I need to go back and review, and dog-eared a lot of pages when I'm feeling like I need a little reminder here and there. And then also just, Herman touched on this a little bit, just having the conversations in the studio. And Herman is such a gift to dance with and to spend this time with, because you're willing to go there and just kind of be very clear on the dialogue we're having with each other. So it's really just a lot of talking as well as, exercising our body and our technique, and making sure that we're in line or whatever we need to be.
Yeah, because also this is like Laura said, it's an adaptation for dance. So even though we have this specific text, there are moments that we need to adjust between us, because the transitions in this ballet are quicker, I believe I could say that. So we have to make sure the transition reads well in this ballet.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go along with what Herman was saying, my character, I swear this isn't a spoiler alert, but I die in the prologue. So I as many transitions, but I've heard that Chris actually asked Laura if he could bring my character back as a ghost. So I do come back. And for me, I did have the novel to draw from, but I also was able to draw from some personal experiences, because I did have someone who was a mother figure to me who passed on. So that was incredibly helpful to kind of touch on the ethereal, kind of mystical elements, the otherworldly. So that was very helpful.
Amy, I just want to add something.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I'm really glad that you had the opportunity to read Tita's Diary. Is the second book of the trilogy. And I just want to tell you, when I first met Chris, I was writing the third part, the colors of my past. I show him, because the Tita's Diary is a book that I did handmade with photos and everything. I show him the original, because it's a facsimilar edition. It's one original and they take it. So for me, it was something very beautiful that he could see that work. And I'm so glad that you, the dancers, could read them. And Christopher put something from the Tita's Diary on scene. So it's fantastic that they have that knowledge of the whole process, because indeed they were 20 years lost, 20 years where Tita grew up. He discovered the alchemy. He was conscious of what she was doing. And that is very important to physically can show that, that change, that insight, and they are doing that. So it's fantastic. I just wanted to comment that.
That's incredible. I actually just got a question from somebody in the audience, and maybe Herman and Cassie, you can answer this, but it's from Marcella. And she says, what was it like to work with all the sets, props, and the costume changes? I got to watch it in OC in April, and it was one of the most beautiful ballets I've ever seen.
It was a lot. I mean, first of all, I think we had a luxury this time because we have some props in the studios, which we never have that, previously. So we could work with some stuff in the studios, but then when we got to the stage, it was a lot. I can't remember how many hours we did the first day with, start and stop. And now we're going to the Met, which is a bigger stage. So I'm sure we're going to have even more rehearsals. But yeah, there's a lot of props. There's a lot of changes of lights, costumes. For me, the quick changes in the costumes, it's ridiculous. My first quick change is like 30 seconds. My second quick change, which is the whole thing to put on a suit, is a minute and 20 seconds. So there's a lot that we deal with besides the, all the acting and the dancing.
Yeah, it's so true. It was pretty wild. I think we do everything we can to prepare in the studio what's going to happen on stage, but you cannot prepare for all of the choreography that happens off stage until you're in that theater. And I mean, shout out to our crew and everybody working behind the scenes, because it's pretty remarkable. I don't know if Chris would talk about this at all, but we learned that all of the lighting changes and the scene changes happen at the push of a button automatically in all of the European theaters. And at the Met and a lot of theaters in the United States, everything is still done manually. So everything that you'll see on that stage is literally just tons of people pulling and pushing and like everything on their own. And so it takes it takes a lot more effort and time for us to get this off the ground. And it's totally worth it. I think for Tita, it's mostly the hair changes. I start off with like a half wig that then goes into long braids, and then I have like about a minute to take the braids out, have hair down, and then it goes up again, and then it comes down again. So yeah, it's a lot of breathing exercises as everybody around you is just like, tornadoes to try and stay focused and calm and remember that you're still in the story.
Yeah, it's funny because I have one quick change and it's pretty quick. It's a little makeup change, but it's nothing compared to some of the other people that I see. So I have witnessed Herman do his 30-second quick change and 1 minute, 20-second quick change. And I would say one of the most impressive quick changes is Mama Elena when she passes on, she comes back as a ghost. That quick change is incredible, and she becomes giant. It's just a whole to do, but it's amazing.
That's true.
Yeah.
So many magical elements, much like the book, very magical.
Absolutely. I actually have a question for you, Herman, which is similar to the first question. With Pedro is a character that's very conflicted with love and duty. And can you share some of your challenges that you faced trying to embody that conflict on stage?
Well, the challenge that I face here and is also due to, comments that I hear about Pedro, and because the first easy way for people to describe Pedro is like, oh, he's a cheater. And there's so many layers to this character. So for me, from beginning to the end, I'm trying to make sure I put all these layers for people to understand why he made that decision. and the pain that he carries through the ballet because of that decision, which was, he's heartbroken, same as Tita, in a different way. So it is a challenge, especially in a ballet that there's no stop, where like when you do a movie you can stop and repeat the scene. So for me as a dancer, it's a challenge to do the acting in one take, and make sure all these layers are there for people to understand, and go along with Pedro, like his character is also in pain.
Absolutely. And you can tell from Pedro that people are complex and it's not just black and white, which I think is really beautiful what Laura did there. And so Cassie, I have a question for you. As Tita, she's a crucial part of the book and a part of the ballet. So how do you prepare before a show for Tita? Are you reading the book in your dressing room or meditating?
Yeah, that's, I definitely.
Recording in progress.
Oh, I think Chris is joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I literally ran upstairs. The curtain's just gone down on my ballet, and I ran up to the office as fast as I could. I'm a little bit late. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We're just chatting and talking about everybody's character, and talking to Laura about the novel and what it's been like for her to see it blossom as a ballet adaptation. So
Is my video on? Okay, no. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna get the tech right, I promise. There we go.
yay.
I think, Cassie, you were telling us what you do before a show to get ready for Tita.
Yes, awesome. Welcome, Chris. Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on where I'm at that day. I do a lot of breathing exercises to sort of like find where I can access different emotions and sort of like different parts of my body. And so I just kind of try to take a moment to just shut out the world and try to focus on exactly where I need to be, what time period I'm in. I have certain moments in the book that I have underlined that I'll just take a second in between acts and just remind myself of those moments that I sort of cling to when I'm feeling maybe a little unfocused or like distracted. And honestly, just getting to rehearse it so much and getting to perform it so much has been such a gift, because it makes it a little easier to just kind of already tap into where you need to be. But yeah, I'd say like breathing is a huge part of it for me. Just, yeah, meditation of sorts and coming back to the text.
Amazing. Thanks, Cass.
Yeah.
Courtney, should we move to our Christopher questions now that he's joined us? I wanted to. Great.
Let's do that. Sorry about that. Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Hi, yeah. Who's asking me the questions?
I will be asking you this first question that has to do with ballet. So can you share some insights into your creative process for adapting such a rich and intricate narrative into a ballet? And were there any elements of the story that you found particularly challenging or rewarding to choreograph?
Oh, goodness. All challenging and all rewarding, I would say. I felt very lucky and honored, first of all, that that Laura agreed to let me take this beautiful and iconic, actually, novel and translate it into dance. And I'm not sure Hi, Laura, if you're there, waving to you. Can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks' time. Laura was very generous in giving us her time, allowing Bob Crowley, the designer, and Joby and myself to go down to Mexico City and spend some time with her and talk her through our ideas for the ballet, listen to some of her ideas. The novel is so dense and rich and full of character and full of situation and spans generations, and that, you know, like with anything that's adapted for dance, I needed to kind of focus in a little bit on the story that felt the most, or the parts of the story, I should say, that felt the most easily communicated through movement. I was very lucky because Laura was very, very kind in saying, okay, you know, that's fine if you have to eliminate this part of the story in order to kind of bring this part out and put that sort of more in front. There is a lot of richness to the characters, and so I suppose the challenge for me was, as ever, finding the dance vocabulary to do justice to these characters, to ground them in a place that felt that it honored the origins and the beautiful country of Mexico and the relationships in the story, but also moving away, in a sense, into the kind of fantasy language of dance, and really, it's one of the reasons I chose this story was for kind of the contrast between the sort of familial domestic relationships of this family on the ranch, and of course the love, the great love between Tita and Pedro, and also the beautiful magical realism, which of course, you know, allows us to kind of start to venture into the land of corps de ballet and fantasy, and so leaning, I suppose, more into those elements, perhaps in the ballet than sort of focusing too much. For example, you know, in the book, there's so much about food and the food. Tita's incredible power and her ability to transmit her emotion into the food, and of course, cooking is quite tricky to depict in dance, and so it became a challenge. Like how far can we go with the ideas of food and cooking, and how do we find a language that sort of obviously stays rooted in those ideas, but also, you know, moves away a little bit from that and focuses on the relationships between the characters.
Laura, I'm curious, were there any, as you and Christopher were talking about this adaptation, were there any moments in the book that you felt really were kind of non-negotiable, that needed to be there?
With Chris, as he just said, I give him all my trust, and he's an alchemist. I will say it again and again and again. He transforms and it takes the elements and do magic, and it's something really incredible. So of course I know, because I did my own adaptation. So I couldn't take exactly the importance of the kitchen to the screen either, because in the book, the cooking is another character. I forget about that. it's, yeah, you see Tita cooking and and it has an effect on people. And here I'm sure we could, Chris did miracles because it's present in the way that should be, and it creates effects and we can see the effects, but it's underlying, is there, you can feel the presence, you can feel that it is important, but here he put an emphasis in the emotion and the transformation, Tita's transformation, Pedro transformation, even Mama Elena's transformation, that it was so difficult to see that it was a castrated mother who has been castrated. And he puts on this beautifully. And I'm just, you know, Chris, that I'm really grateful. And you did an amazing job on an adaptation job. And is with a lot of respect for the importance of what the job that Tita's and the revolution, Tita in the novel, she doesn't go to the revolution outside, she does it inside. And you can feel it and you can watch it. And that is the most important thing for me, to show that from a space contained, from a space that you can say, she was a slave. No, she was an alchemist too. She was a great spirit, with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of connection. And that was the importance. And he did it beautiful and magnificent in that. I'm sorry, I don't have the language to express correctly or properly, but I wish I could speak better. But I think it's there. The love, the passion, the intention, the transformation, the movement, and what happens, what do we keep inside that imprison us, and we can liberate. And he has a beautiful scene when Mama Elena put a corset on Tita's body, and then Nacha comes and liberate. That's it. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. And you expressed that so beautifully. and I'm very honored. Thank you. Thank you.
Christopher, when developing the scenario with Joby Talbot, who I know is one of your most frequent collaborators, and who wrote the music for the ballet, you transformed these characters from the novel into living, breathing roles. How much influence did the original novel have guiding the characters for the ballet, and how much came from the artistic interpretations of the dancers themselves?
Oh goodness, yeah, such a good question. I mean, we actually, we would refer to, and I did this a little bit with ABT, but especially when we were creating it, we had the book, I had the book with me at all times. And, I have this very marked up version, now quite sort of tattered and precious to me version of the book. Paperback version that I would write in and circle and make notes in, and we would refer to Laura's language quite a lot as we were making the piece, and with Francesca and Marcelino, the original Tita and Pedro, and also Mama Elena. And there are just some really truly beautiful and very, very concise and descriptive moments in Laura's writing that that almost jump from the page and kind of you know, scream, okay, this is the focus of this scene, this image that she's created here, or this sentence, or just connection between the two characters, is the genesis, the seed for this moment emotionally, and that's kind of how we ended up putting the piece together, really clearly defining where the emotional core of each scene was, the way that we had broken it down anyway, and then sort of starting with that and allowing the dance to kind of build out around those moments. So it's all very much there in the book. And you know, I'm so happy to hear Laura actually say how they sort of how she, in her adaptation for the film, sort of moved away a little bit from the cooking, because of course in the book the cooking is a character, and it's so emotional, and you can smell it and you can taste it, and of course that's not something that you can do easily in a ballet, although actually, just, you know, for as you would say, for shits and giggles, we were throwing out all these ideas initially, and I was like, maybe we can be the first ballet where we actually start pumping delicious food smells through the air conditioning unit during the piece. One of the ways that I sort of made sure that the kitchen, or that food in a way was represented, is through the use of tables in the ballet. There are 7 tables in the piece. The table is ever present. The tables are characters themselves, and they represent the place where the family gathers to eat. So that was, I suppose, one idea that I had, to make sure that there was this idea, this sort of presence of the coming together for a meal sort of throughout the piece. And, you know, even at one point we were going to make the table into the horse for Gertrudis to ride off on, and then Bob came to me one day and he said, I've got this wonderful idea for the horse, so you're gonna have to let your tables go just for a second. but you know, that sort of remains throughout. Actually, the tables become sort of a theme and a character, I suppose, in a way, in the piece.
Yeah, I went to the preview and at Chelsea Factory and saw the big blue table right there, and it was very much a central part of every scene that you previewed there. So it was interesting to see in action.
Yeah, the tables actually, I remember the production meetings here at the Royal Opera House, and we were trying to figure out, because I think originally I thought, well, we could do this all around one table. It could just be one table throughout the piece. But of course, logistically, that became very, very difficult. And then we started having fun ideas about, you know, there's a trick table at one point where the tablecloth magically sort of disappears, going into the fantasy of Gertrudis. And so the list of tables started to add up. And I remember the final production meeting, and the production supervisor just going, wait, can we just go through the table? How many tables do we have now? And it ended up being 7 tables, you know, probably with an understudy, so maybe 8.
I have a silly question to ask you, Chris, because I'm purely curious. In the second act of the ballet, I didn't notice it right away, but there is a guitar player on stage while the dancers are dancing. And as an audience member, I would assume that person playing the guitar was a dancer. And I'm just curious whose idea that was to have someone on stage playing during the show.
Well, thank you for actually bringing that up, Courtney, because that is a very, very poorly executed moment on my part. And I actually realized what I'd done when we got to Orange County. So we have, for those of you that are watching, we have this wonderful guitarist. His name is Tomas Barrigas, and he's just the most wonderful man and musician. And when we were creating the ballet, he actually spent weeks with us here in London, and he would play in rehearsals like a rehearsal pianist. He would play with the rehearsal pianist, which of course brought this incredible flavor to rehearsals and to even to the choreographic process. Joby uses the guitar throughout. And so I loved Tomas so much that I was like, we have to have Tomas in the ballet. And so, yes, in fact, he does play on the side of the stage at the end of Act 2. There's a big number, and he's sort of the feature of the number. But I realized in Orange County that people are standing in front of him for almost all of the acts, you know, and I think also the dancers love to have him there. It's kind of great and unusual to have a musician on stage playing, and so they kind of gather around him a little bit, and I realized that you can't actually see him, so you wouldn't necessarily know that he's playing. So there will be an adjustment at the Met. We're going to actually have a moment where he walks to center and plays kind of early on when he first comes onto the stage, just so we establish that and can enjoy this wonderful musician up on stage with the dancers.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to that because he is absolutely incredible.
He really is. He really is quite special.
I have a question. I know, Laura, you talked earlier about magical realism and all of that, and I wanted to ask the dancers about that, how you kind of navigated the magical realism in the novel into your performances, and if you want, you could share a scene of something that significantly influenced you or whatnot, but just if you could share a little bit about what that was like.
No, I think we're so fortunate that it's cooked in, like pun not intended, but it's just really like, you know, infused into the work itself. I think one of the most obvious moments in the ballet is when I take the rose that Pedro has given me at Rosaura's wedding to him to remind me that he, in fact, loves me very much, and he's only marrying my sister to be closer to me. And so I have this rose, and I'm just like swept up in the passion that I have for him, and I'm creating a meal for my family using the rose. So it's like a quail with a rose sauce, and I don't want to give too much away, but that's when Gertrudis's fantasy begins. She's aroused by my cooking, and it just kind of goes from this very real space where we're in a kitchen, we're in a home, we're sitting around a table about to consume this meal or starting to consume this meal. And then all of a sudden the tablecloth is swept away and these painted humans come on stage, and there's sparkles and roses, and it's just really so fabulous.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's one of my favorite parts. And, you know, actually I believe is the moment that it's the less dancing for me, but it's the most enjoyable moment to do this acting at the table and, you know, eating and trying to feel that love and, you know, the petals coming down. It's really magical. And I have to say that even though this role was created in somebody else, working with Chris, it just feels that it was created for me. And that's, you know, something that I treasure because, you know, when I go on stage, I really feel like Pedro, and that's something that Chris can do because he allows you in a way to be you and find who Pedro is. And I think that the arc for this whole piece, you know, it's magic, but it's also very real.
Yeah, absolutely, Herman. I connect with you so much because I feel so connected to Nacha. And I think Chris has made it so easy, and Laura with the book, just being able to embody a character like that. And for me, like I mentioned, I had somebody in my life who was a mother figure, but wasn't my mom, and she did pass on. So it really helped me get into character and be able to portray her on stage, but also speaking to Chris and asking him questions really helped me figure out the mysticism.
Courtney, we didn't really actually get to talk to you about your role as Nacha. Did you want to talk at all about that, about what she brings to the narratives, to the ballet and everything? I know you said she dies early in the work, but then she comes back throughout.
Yes, absolutely. I love Nacha, Chris. She's amazing. I love her.
We all love Nacha. We all love her.
She's great. Nacha is the family cook, and she ends up taking care of Tita. So she is sort of Tita's mother figure. And she's also kind of a mystic herself and has certain powers that I guess get passed on to Tita, or I'm assuming. But yeah, she's essential because she loves Tita, and Tita's mother is so terrible to her. So I think Tita learns what love is through Nacha. And coming back, she kind of guides the first act with her magic and helps Tita along the way and shows her how to cook that erotic chicken. So it's been incredible really working on Nacha with Chris.
I thought maybe we could, go around to all of you and just maybe just get your thoughts on how themes of love and tradition and rebellion that are in this novel translate into the language of ballet.
Who's going to start? Shall I start?
Sure.
I think one of the things that is so beautiful about this story that Laura has created is that, it's a very, very Mexican story, and no doubt Mexico kind of permeates through all of what we do, and we have, all of us, I think, a great love for the story. I have a great love for Mexico as a country as well. But I think at its heart, it's a story about family, and I think we all relate to that in one way or another. Like, we all have had a Nacha, or we have had, hopefully not too many of us have had Mama Elena's, but we've had siblings, we've had those intense feelings of love and betrayal and fear around love. It's a very, very universal tale. And I think that's why people connect to it, why the audience connect to it, why the dancers connect to it. Laura, you've made something that we all feel. It's so very visceral, the emotion around this story. And so we all find our way in different ways. And for me, interestingly enough, Nacha was kind of, was my way in. I began the creation, making the solo for Nacha. My mother is wonderful. I don't have a Mama Elena, but I did have, when my mother was at work from 6 to 10 or 11, she would drop me off at the farm in Somerset, which is where I'm from in England, which is very rural. And the farmer's wife would take care of me. She was essentially my nanny, unconventional nanny, but we would go collect the eggs in the morning from the hens. We would milk the cow. I milked the cows with her. So for me, that's why I began with Nacha, because I felt closest, in a sense, to her. And there's definitely a piece of my heart in Nacha. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that.
There was something that I noticed in the ballet, Chris, about tradition, which you were talking about, Amy, and I thought it was really amazing how in the prologue there's a tablecloth, and initially the way I was folding the tablecloth to take it off was not great, I'll say. It was just very messy. And then Chris was like, no, this is a tablecloth that was passed down for generations, and when you fold it, you have to take care because you're going to put it away. And I thought, like, that's brilliant. Because that is probably something that people would do if they have something very nice. And I thought that was a great element to the story.
Yeah, I would like to say something. When I've been in many parts of the world where they have invited me, and for me it was a surprise because when I wrote the novel, I didn't expect the novel to be translated. And then when the novel started to be a bestseller in here, they invited me there. I said, how come I expected in Latin American countries or whatever? But no, it surprised me that in Norway or Japan or Patagonia or Spain, any place, there is a sentence that the people used to say to me. And the sentence is, you have no idea how much I remember my grandmother's kitchen. And that's it. Chris just said that. This is something really go deeply to your memory, to personal and universal and cosmic memory. We belong there. And Nacha is I love Nacha too, because she represents the earth, the tradition, the knowledge that now in these days we need to recover more and more and more and more, because we need that. We need to take care of what we plant, what we grow, what we eat, what we share. And again, thank you, Chris, because yes, the table is there in the scene all the time, the table where we get into communion. That's the communion indeed. We are eating together. We are sharing together. And I'm very, very grateful with the universe because I share my table when Christopher was in Mexico, and I have shared table with him in London, and now we are going to share table in New York with all of you, and that is a real gift and a blessing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's like so hard to follow that. But Laura, it really is like, I don't know, I felt very seen by the book. It's just one of those really special works where it's so easy to personalize it, like everything that y'all are saying. You have a Dacha in your life, you have connections to each of the characters somehow, just simply by how you've brought them to life through your words. And now we have the gift of bringing them to life on stage. And I think one thing that really struck me in reading Tita's story was her incredible capacity to have compassion and love for folks that were not kind to her, and Chris, you have an amazing scene in the ballet where we get to learn Mama Elena's story and why she treated Tita the way she did. And I think it's a beautiful moment for Tita to just sort of, I mean, she's been born in an environment where Nacha's taken care of her and has taught her how to love and where to find the truth within her, and like the strength to listen to her desires, right? And oh gosh, I've lost my train of thought now. It was going somewhere really nice though, I promise. Oh, Mama Elena's story. It's like she finally gets to read her diary and then recognizes that the women in her life are the way they are because of the, they're products of the environments that they were raised in, and they didn't have another chance. And so there's this sort of generational healing that now gets to take place from Tita forward. And I think that just feels so relevant right now. So thank you for that. That was really nice to have. And it's a nice gift to be able to tell that story on stage.
It is. It's definitely a gift. And what I can say from my side is that I'm most happy and proud about this is to bring a Hispanic story to the stage. Through the years, I've been with ABT for 25 years. And every time we portray a role on stage, all these classics, it's the old Europeans. And so for me to be able to bring a Latino Hispanic role, the story to the stage, it makes me very proud and happy to be dancing in this moment. Also because the way Chris has choreographed like Water for Chocolate, to me is a step up. It's like the new classics. This is how we are going to show what ballet is from now on.
Yeah, it's so true, Herman. And quickly to touch on that, it's such a progressive ballet. And one of my favorite moments from California was seeing my cousin after the show, who had never seen a ballet in his entire life, but he is obsessed with movies. And so he was like, Courtney, this is absolutely incredible. It was like watching a movie on stage, and had so many questions for me. And he was like, I didn't know ballet was like that. And then my brother was like, not all ballets are like that. Not all ballets. So he's a full believer in ballet now. So thank you, Chris.
I love that. That's amazing. Actually, funny story. I'll be quick because I know we're running out of time, but I got a random message. Somebody Instagram messaged me and said, hey, you don't know me, my name's so-and-so, and I'm just a guy in London, and I got asked to go on a date to this ballet in London called like Water for Chocolate. And I was like, I don't know what the ballet is. I don't know what that story is, but I was really into the girl. So I went on the date, and I just felt like I had to write you afterwards, because I don't want to go on another date with the girl, but I just can't wait to go back to the ballet. And that was the best compliment. It just was the best compliment, because we need to be building our audiences and and connecting with them, and this story, I think, is one that does connect with people in a very beautiful way. So very, very fortunate to have been allowed to make this happen. And Laura and I keep thanking each other, but I feel like there's never enough thanks, never enough gratitude. But yes, I love that, Courtney. That's a great story. I'm glad I converted him.
One thing I also want to mention just very quickly too, that Christopher, is the music is also original, brand new, and very tied to Mexico as well.
Yes, in fact, Alondra de la Parra, who is a dear friend of mine, has been for many years. She actually conducted the first season of Morphosis in New York. She graduated and had her own orchestra in New York called the Orchestra of Americas, which was focusing on bringing the music of Latin America sort of to the forefront in New York. And so we met through that and have been friends ever since. She worked very closely with Joby as sort of a creative consultant, helping him with identifying interesting unusual instruments, and also just identifying and helping him make sure that he's not, you know, veering towards rhythms or melodies that might sort of lean more towards Spanish and less Mexican, and just someone who you know, through her care and her guidance, you know, was able to just make sure that we were sort of honoring this beautiful country, and that Joby was doing so in his music. But yeah, Joby's score is wonderful. It's, I think, my favorite of the 3 scores he's written for me. They're all beautiful, but this one feels very special and is very clear in its storytelling, which of course helps me, you know, because he's already done the legwork, as it were, in introducing themes and characters through the music.
Well, thank you, Christopher, and thank you, everybody. That actually brings us to an end of our pop-up book club today. So I want to thank all of the panelists and audience members for joining us for this exclusive conversation today, and we hope you were able to gain a deeper understanding of the book and its journey to becoming a ballet. ABT's Like Water for Chocolate will have its New York premiere at the Metropolitan Opera House this June 22nd to July 1st. For 12 performances only. So we hope to see you there. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
See you all really soon. Can't wait to see you all.
Thank you. Yeah.